Shalom, 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 ki mitzion teitze Torah, udvar Hashem Yerushalayim, the word of God from Jerusalem, the Torah from Zion. And we are in our fourth lesson, trying to understand the deep, global, universal meaning of the holiday of Passover. In our previous lesson, we spoke about a very interesting scholarly reading of the Bible, of the story of Garden of Eden. And according to that explanation, Rabbi Yehudah in the Talmud says that the tree of knowledge of good and bad was actually a tree of bread, tree of wheat. And when God cursed the ground, he actually changed the tree of wheat to become a stalk with seed. Today we're going to try to understand a little more depth on that topic. The very first aspect of the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden was the sin of eating. Their eating was what brought the punishment to the land, which what brought the fact that man has to struggle to bring bread. And actually, the first sin in the Torah is described is the sin of eating. And actually, eating is the very basic prototype of sin in the world. Why does the very fact of eating play such a central role in the Garden of Eden? First of all, let's read and see if that's the story. Because let me just see, why am I claiming that eating plays such a central role in the story of the Garden of Eden? So let's open the book of Genesis, chapter 3, and we will see, already in chapter 2 actually, we see that the very, very, very description of the garden. God planted a garden. Okay, he plants a garden, and he puts man there, and he caused to sprout up from the ground trees. But what does it say about the trees? Every tree good to eat and pleasant to see. So the very description of the tree was a subjective description, telling that what the tree serves for a person. And he goes on that the whole garden is there for the trees. There are 4 rivers that are out to water the garden. And then Hashem takes man, puts him in the Garden of Eden, and he tells him, from all the trees of the garden you shall eat, and from the tree of knowledge of good and bad you shall not eat. So we see that eating plays such a central role. Then in verse 17, the tree of knowledge you shall not eat, for the day you eat, you shall surely die. So we see how eating is there really playing such a central role. The 2 obligations: one, to eat from all the trees; one, not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. How do we understand the concept that eating is an obligation? Is an obligation? What is actually eating? Eating is an action that a person does to nurture himself, either from a intellectual understanding that this is what he needs, or from the feeling of hunger. But beyond that, the very experience of eating goes beyond that. We have the senses, the smell that adds to the eating, the looking at what it looks like, the flavor, the very structure of the food that we're eating. When food is not tasty to our mouth, it's a very non-pleasant experience. When the food is tasty for our mouth, it's very pleasant and it can be a very great enjoyment. Not only in the Garden of Eden does eating play such a central role. From the very first moment that a baby is born, his whole life is dependent on eating. The very first temptation of a person is about eating. It's the only temptation that has nothing to do with somebody else. Jealousy, I'm jealous of somebody else. Honor, I want others to honor me. Even the temptation of sexuality, I have a temptation to assert to somebody else. Eating is a temptation that has to do with myself. And also in the Garden of Eden, we see the two sides of the eating. We said that the garden is full of everything good for the sake of man. The expressions that are used on the quality of the trees are subjective. They refer to the relationship between the tree and man. Even the two trees that are mentioned by their names in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and bad, their name is given to them based on their influence on man. So the trees are the central or the most important part of the garden. Everything taking place in the garden is around the idea of trees and the eating of them. And their main purpose is to be good for eating, to serve for the eating. In the very basic understanding, eating is what is the existence of the person. It's very existential to eat. And God created a variety and an overflow of amount, no ending amount of trees. Trees are also very stable. They're watered by ongoing rivers. So the living in the Garden of Eden is without any fear, without any existential fear, and full of self-security, full of that I'm secure, everything's going to be okay. So we see the amount, the diversity, and everything is beautiful for to be eaten. So what is the obligation? What does it mean when there's an obligation to eat? It means there's an obligation for us to enjoy the flourishing life and good of the Garden of Eden. And that is what it means. When we eat in the Garden of Eden, we're fulfilling the purpose of ourselves. And what is the purpose? To live in the surrounding of God. And that's the whole life in Garden of Eden. And the whole concept of eating is, yes, we are obligated to accept and to receive the good that Hashem influences on the world. And that's all about eating. And that's the general positive side of eating. But there's another kind of eating. When you're tempted on the less important part, if the whole concept of your eating is concentrating and focused not on the fact that the eating will serve you as a human being, nurture your body, but the taste and the enjoyment and the fun of eating and that's what happened to the sin. The sin of Eve was when she saw the benefit she's going to get from the tree, not the permanent enjoyment, but the temporary enjoyment. The concentrating on the less important part of the food. And that's where you lose the perspective of life. When you concentrate on the temptation of the eating and not on the need of your body for food to serve God. And now we're going to get close in our next lesson. We'll start understanding really what Hashem wants from us in our eating, and then we'll finally get to understand the concept of chametz and matzah, leavened and unleavened bread. Shalom for now. Lesson number 4. We're going on. Shalom. From Zion comes out Torah, the word of Hashem from Jerusalem. You're welcome to partner with Shalom Jerusalem Foundation in bringing about the Torah from Zion.